Why are so many countries around the globe off limits to Americans in 2025? Imagine lands with ancient cities, exotic jungles, or towering peaks, yet not a single U.S. traveler in sight. What's locking us out? Could it be political feuds, dangerous unrest, or something even odder? In this video, we're diving into the 10 countries Americans are not allowed to visit in 2025, uncovering why they've shut their doors and what's fueling these bans. Stay tuned. Some reasons are downright wild, and you won't believe which country tops the list. Can you guess which one? Number 10, North Korea. Kicking things off at number 10 is a country that's long been shrouded in secrecy and intrigue. North Korea. This reclusive nation spans roughly 46,000 square miles and is home to an estimated 25 million people, though exact numbers are hard to pin down given how closed off it is from the rest of the world. Picture this, a land where towering statues of past leaders loom over quiet streets, where propaganda blares from loudspeakers, and where the capital city of Pyongyang glows with an eerie, almost otherworldly skyline at night. North Korea has never been a hotspot for American tourists, but in 2025, it's officially a no-go zone, and it's been that way for quite some time. The U.S. State Department first imposed a travel ban on American citizens heading to North Korea back in 2017, and that restriction remains firmly in place today, reinforced in 2024 after yet another round of missile tests rattled the international community. Why the ban? Well, it's all about safety or the lack thereof. North Korea's government has a well-documented history of detaining foreigners, including Americans, often on vague or trumped-up charges like espionage. One of the most heartbreaking cases was that of Otto Warmbier, a young American student who was arrested in 2016 for allegedly stealing a propaganda poster. He was detained for 17 months, only to be returned to the U.S. in a coma, passing away shortly after in 2017. That tragedy was a wake-up call, and it's a big reason why the U.S. government says, nope, not worth the risk. In 2024, tensions spiked again when North Korea conducted a series of ballistic missile launches, prompting the U.S. to double down on its travel warnings. Before the ban, a tiny handful of adventurous Americans, maybe a few hundred each year, managed to visit via tightly controlled tours organized through China, catching fleeting glimpses of this isolated world. They'd talk about the surreal experience of walking through Pyongyang, surrounded by choreographed crowds and minders who watch their every move. But now, those days are long gone. Travel agencies that once specialized in these rare trips have shifted gears, pointing disappointed explorers toward other destinations. North Korea's ban isn't just about politics, it's about protecting Americans from a regime that sees them as potential pawns in a high-stakes game. So while its mysterious allure remains, from its jagged mountains to its forbidden cities, North Korea stays locked behind an impenetrable wall for U.S. travelers in 2025. Number 9, Russia. Moving on to number 9, we've got Russia, a colossal country that stretches across a mind-boggling 6.6 million square miles, making it the largest nation on Earth by landmass. With a population of about 144 million people, it's a place of rich history and stunning sights, from the golden domes of Moscow's Red Square to the icy expanse of Siberia. But in 2025, if you're an American, you're not setting foot here. Russia has effectively barred U.S. travelers, and the story behind this ban is a tangled web of geopolitics. Relations between the United States and Russia have been on thin ice for years. Think Cold War vibes with a modern twist. But things took a sharp nosedive in 2018-2024. It started with allegations of Russian cyber attacks targeting U.S. infrastructure. followed by yet another escalation in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. The U.S. slapped Russia with a fresh round of crippling sanctions, and Russia fired back by halting all tourist visas for American citizens, effective immediately. The official reason: national security concerns and a desire to counter Western interference, according to Kremlin statements. Before this ban kicked in, Russia was actually a decent draw for American tourists. Over 300,000 of us visited in 2023 alone, pouring millions of dollars into cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg. Tour operators love showing off the Hermitage Museum or the Bolshoi Theater, and travelers would rave about sipping vodka by the Moskva River. But now that revenue stream has dried up, and Russian hospitality businesses are feeling the sting as they scramble to attract visitors from elsewhere, like China or India. For Americans with Russian heritage, this ban hits even harder. Many had planned to visit relatives or trace their family roots, only to find themselves stuck on the outside looking in. Some have turned to Zoom calls or virtual tours to stay connected, but it's just not the same. Russia's decision to lock out Americans in 2025 paints a vivid picture of a deepening divide between these two global powers, leaving its snowy forests and bustling cities off limits to U.S. passports for the foreseeable future. Number 8. Iran. Coming in at number 8 is Iran, a country steeped in ancient history and jaw-dropping beauty. Spanning 636,000 square miles with a population of around 88 million, Iran is home to Persian palaces, intricate mosques, and sprawling deserts that have captivated travelers for centuries. But in 2025, Americans are persona non grata here. Iran officially banned U.S. citizens in 2024, and the reasons are as old as they are complicated. The U.S. and Iran have been at odds since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, when diplomatic ties were severed and the U.S. Embassy in Tehran was stormed. Fast forward to 2024, and tensions boiled over yet again, this time over Iran's nuclear program. The U.S. imposed new sanctions after failed talks, and Iran responded by shutting its borders to American travelers, citing security threats and potential espionage. Before the ban, Iran wasn't exactly a top destination for Americans, but a small, steady stream, about 5,000 per year, made the trek via organized tours, often starting in Europe or the Middle East. They'd marvel at sites like Persepolis, a 2,500-year-old ruin, or wander the bustling bazaars of Isfahan, soaking in the hospitality of locals who'd offer tea and stories. That cultural exchange, it's gone now. Iran's tourism industry, already small, has taken a hit, and Americans who dreamed of exploring its rich heritage are left disappointed. With no U.S. embassy since '79, there's no safety net if things go wrong, and Iran's government isn't taking chances with Americans on its soil. For those who've been, the memories of saffron-scented markets linger, but in 2025, Iran's doors are firmly closed, a casualty of decades-long mistrust. Number 7, Cuba. At number 7, we've got Cuba, a Caribbean island so close you can almost see it from Florida, just 90 miles south of Key West. With 11 million people packed into 42,000 square miles, it's a place bursting with life. Think vintage 1950s cars rumbling down Havana's streets, salsa music spilling from open windows, and the smell of cigars in the air. But in 2025, Americans can't step foot here. Cuba's story with the U.S. is a roller coaster: embargoes, standoffs, and brief moments of hope. Back in 2016, under President Obama, relations thawed and Americans flocked to Cuba. Over 600,000 visited in 2017 alone, boosting the island's economy with millions in tourism dollars. It was a golden era of cruise ships and cultural exchanges, but that didn't last. By 2024, tensions flared again as the U.S. tightened sanctions over human rights concerns, and Cuba hit back, banning American tourists entirely. The official line? Protecting our sovereignty from economic sabotage, says the Cuban government. The impact is huge. Tourism, a lifeline for Cuba, has taken a nosedive, with hotels and restaurants in Havana and Varadero losing that American cash flow. For U.S. travelers, it's a gut punch. Those who visited before the ban talk about dancing in the streets, sipping mojitos, and marveling at the colorful colonial architecture. Now those experiences are on hold, and the island's vibrant spirit feels just out of reach. Cuba's ban in 2025 is a stark reminder of how fragile U.S.-Cuba ties are, leaving its beaches and rhythms off limits to Americans once more. Number 6. Venezuela. Sliding into number 6 is Venezuela, a South American nation of 28 million people spread across 353,000 square miles. Once a jewel of the continent thanks to its oil wealth, it's now a shadow of its former self. And Americans aren't welcome in 2025. The ban came in 2024 when Venezuela's government, led by Nicolas Maduro, barred U.S. citizens, claiming imperialist interference after the U.S. backed opposition groups and imposed more sanctions. This isn't a new feud. Relations have been rocky since the early 2000s, but it hit a breaking point last year. Even before the official ban, Venezuela was a tough sell for tourists. Crime rates are sky high. Think carjackings in Caracas. An economic collapse has left shelves empty and inflation soaring. The U.S. State Department had it at level 4. Do not travel for years, warning of kidnappings and unrest. Still, a small number of Americans, mostly expats or those with family, visited annually, drawn to the stunning Angel Falls or the Caribbean coast. Now that's over. The ban cuts off those personal ties, leaving families separated and travelers looking elsewhere, like Colombia or Brazil, for South American adventures. Venezuela's tourism was never huge, maybe a few thousand Americans pre-ban, but its isolation is complete in 2025, locking away its natural wonders behind a wall of political strife. Number 5, Syria. We're halfway through our countdown, and at number 5 sits Syria, a nation of 17 million souls stretched across 185,000 square miles, scarred by more than a decade of relentless conflict. In 2025, Americans are strictly banned, and honestly, it's hardly a shock given the sheer chaos that defines this place. Syria's brutal civil war erupted back in 2011, a bloody clash pitting President Bashar al-Assad's regime against a patchwork of rebels, extremists, and foreign powers, reducing once thriving cities like Aleppo and Homs to haunting piles of rubble. In 2024, Assad's government clamped down harder, banning U.S. citizens outright, pointing to terrorism risks and foreign meddling as their excuse to keep Americans at bay. The U.S. pulled its embassy out in 2012, and for years travel warnings have been blaring, "Don't even think about it." Imagine constant bombings, kidnappings around every corner, and a lawless void where order once stood. Before the war, a few thousand Americans trickled in annually, lured by the ancient allure of sites like Palmyra, with its weathered Roman columns, or the labyrinthine souks of Damascus, fragrant with spices and history. Travelers would rave about the unexpected warmth of locals, sharing tea and stories amid ruins that whispered of lost empires. But now, over 13 million Syrians are displaced, fleeing homes turned to dust, and the country's a hollow shell of its former glory. This ban feels more symbolic than practical. Few would dare risk it anyway. Yet it drives a final nail into the coffin of any return, cementing Syria's exclusion in 2025 as a bleak testament to its unending tragedy, locking its storied past far beyond American reach. Number 4, Afghanistan. Number 4 sweeps us into Afghanistan, a rugged, untamed land of 41 million people sprawled across 252,000 square miles of harsh terrain. Since the Taliban stormed back into power in 2021, following the chaotic U.S. military withdrawal, it's been a desolate no man's land for Americans. And in 2025, that status is set in stone. In 2024, the Taliban slammed the door shut on U.S. travelers, declaring Western threats endangered their fragile grip on authority, a move sparked by the U.S. freezing billions in Afghan assets and piling on sanctions after failed talks. The U.S. State Department brands it Level 4, do not travel, with warnings screaming of rampant terrorism, simmering civil unrest, and kidnapping risks that loom like shadows over every dusty road. Before 2021, a mere trickle of Americans, mostly gritty aid workers or daring journalists, braved the journey, captivated by the towering Hindu Kush mountains piercing the sky or the frenetic, honking chaos of Kabul's crowded bazaars. But now, with 24 million Afghans desperate for humanitarian aid, starving, displaced, and forgotten, and no U.S. embassy since the 2021 pullout, it's a black hole swallowing any hope of travel. The ban severs the last fragile threads of connection. For veterans who served there or aid workers who bonded with locals, the loss cuts deep, a quiet ache for a land they once knew. Afghanistan's stark isolation in 2025 buries its ancient Silk Road legacy, once a crossroads of empires, leaving its jagged peaks, windswept valleys, and resilient people sealed off, far beyond American reach. Number 3, Libya. At number 3, we land in Libya, a sprawling North African nation of 7 million people stretched across 679,000 square miles of sun-scorched desert and coastline. Since Muammar Gaddafi's dramatic fall in 2011, it's been a chaotic tangle of militias, mayhem, and shattered dreams. And in 2025, Americans are firmly shut out. In 2024, Libya's fractured government, barely holding together amid warring factions, banned U.S. citizens, gripped by paranoia over espionage as rival warlords vie for power in lucrative oil fields. The U.S. yanked its embassy out of Tripoli back in 2014, and travel warnings paint a grim picture. Think relentless violence, ambushes, kidnappings in broad daylight, and terrorism lurking around every corner. Before this descent into anarchy, a few hundred Americans trickled in each year, wandering through the breathtaking Roman ruins of Leptis Magna, with its weathered arches, or the winding alleys of Tripoli's old Medina. Alive with the chatter of traders, they'd gush about the shimmering Mediterranean coast, kissing golden sands and the serene desert oases tucked amid endless dunes. But now, stability's a distant memory, oil wealth fuels conflict, and the risks are sky high. This ban's mostly a formality. Tourism's been a ghost town for over a decade, but it bolts the door on Libya's untapped potential. In 2025, its sandy shores, whispering of ancient empires, and timeless relics remain forbidden, lost to Americans in the wreckage of ceaseless strife. Number 2, Yemen. Number 2 brings us to Yemen, a war-torn nation of 34 million souls scattered across 214,000 square miles of rugged mountains, arid deserts, and jagged coastlines along the Arabian Peninsula. Since its devastating civil war ignited in 2015, pitting the Iran-backed Houthi rebels against a fragile, internationally recognized government, Yemen has spiraled into one of the world's worst humanitarian catastrophes. And in 2025, Americans are completely barred from setting foot there. In 2024, Yemen's leadership, fractured and desperate, banned U.S. travelers outright, pointing to conflict escalation as the reason, a decision fueled by a barrage of U.S. airstrikes hammering Houthi strongholds in retaliation for attacks on Red Sea shipping lanes. The U.S. State Department labels it Level 4, do not travel, and for good reason. Famine stalks the land. Cholera sweeps through villages like a silent plague, and violence erupts daily, from roadside bombs to drone strikes, rendering it a place where survival, not living, is the norm. Before the war tore it apart, a rare handful of Americans ventured here, drawn by the enchanting, almost mystical beauty of Sanaa's ancient mud brick towers, rising like a mirage from the highlands, or the otherworldly alien landscapes of Socotra Island, with its dragon's blood trees twisting against a turquoise sea. Those intrepid travelers would recount tales of sipping kishir, a spiced coffee drink, with locals who proudly traced their heritage to Yemen's days as a coffee trade titan. But now, with 24 million Yemenis, two-thirds of the population, desperate for humanitarian aid, their homes reduced to rubble and their lives upended, and no U.S. embassy since it shuttered in 2015 amid the chaos. Yemen's a no-fly zone, a forbidden frontier for Americans. This ban cements Yemen's tragic isolation, sealing off its rich coffee legacy, its storied Arabian charm, and its haunting beauty, all buried beneath a decade of unrelenting strife and despair. Number 1, Myanmar. Topping our list at number 1 is Myanmar, also known as Burma, a captivating Southeast Asian nation of 54 million people spread across 261,000 square miles of lush jungles, rolling hills, and shimmering rivers that weave through its heart. In 2025, Americans are barred from entering, and the story behind this ban is nothing short of a tragic saga. It all began with the military coup in February 2021, when the Tatmadaw, the Burmese armed forces, overthrew a fledgling democracy, toppling Aung San Suu Kyi's elected government in a ruthless power grab that ignited nationwide protests and brutal crackdowns. By 2024, the junta, facing mounting international pressure, banned U.S. travelers entirely, claiming foreign influence threatened their iron-fisted control, a move spurred by a cascade of U.S.-led sanctions targeting their leaders and resources. Before this dark turn, Myanmar was a rising star for tourism. 150,000 Americans flock there each year, their jaws dropping at the sight of Bagan's 2,000 ancient temples, a sea of spires piercing the sky, or the serene beauty of inlay lakes floating villages, where fishermen rode with their legs in a dance with the water. Travelers would sit spellbound, sipping tea with locals whose warmth shone through despite decades of hardship, watching golden pagodas blaze under fiery sunsets. But now, tourism has plummeted over 90%, a devastating blow that's left hoteliers, guides, and artisans jobless, their livelihoods crushed under military boots. Those who once visited speak wistfully of the Burmese spirit, resilient, generous, and proud, and the sacred stillness of places like Mandalay's monasteries. Today, Myanmar is a militarized no-go zone, its borders bristling with checkpoints, its skies silent without the hum of tourist planes. The ban in 2025 marks a heartbreaking end to its tourism heyday, locking away a land of breathtaking beauty and cultural riches beneath the suffocating grip of authoritarian rule, a paradise lost to Americans in the world. Impact and outro. These bans aren't just lines on a map, they ripple worldwide. Airlines cancel routes, hotels sit empty, and cultural bridges collapse. Local economies in these countries, already struggling, lose out on American dollars, while travelers miss out on incredible experiences. Will these restrictions lift? It's hard to say. Diplomacy shifts like sand. But for 2025, these 10 nations are off limits to Americans. What do you think? Any surprises on this list? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. We've got more travel stories coming your way. Next up, we'll explore where Americans can go in 2025. Until then, keep dreaming of the world, even if it's from the comfort of home. Thanks for watching.